When it comes to that very first intimate moment, the thing most men notice isn't whether you have the perfect body, flawless skin, or some magazine version of beauty. What captures their attention almost immediately is the way you carry yourself, your confidence, your comfort, your ease in your own skin. Because in that moment, both of you are vulnerable, and vulnerability has this way of magnifying everything. If you're overly self-conscious, if you're hiding yourself, constantly worrying about what he's thinking, that energy is felt instantly. It's like when you walk into a room and someone is nervous, you don't even have to know why, you just feel it. In the same way, men notice your confidence, not your perfection. A lot of people think men are analyzing every detail, but the truth is they're not looking for perfection, they're looking for presence. They notice whether you're allowing yourself to be there with them, or whether your mind is somewhere else, tangled up in self-doubt. That little laugh you give when you're relaxed, that playful look in your eyes, the way you hold yourself without shrinking away, these are the things that actually stay with him. Confidence is attractive, not because it's loud or showy, but because it tells him you're comfortable enough to let him in. And when you're comfortable, he feels more comfortable too. Think about it. When someone is with you and they seem ashamed, worried, or constantly covering themselves, it doesn't just affect them, it affects the entire connection. It creates a barrier. But when you show up and you're unapologetic about who you are in that moment, you send a powerful message. You're saying, this is me. I'm not trying to perform. I'm not trying to hide. I'm not chasing some impossible standard. I'm here. That presence and confidence pull him closer, and it's what makes intimacy feel alive rather than mechanical. And here's the thing most people don't realize: confidence isn't about thinking you're perfect. Confidence is about being okay with your imperfections. Men notice when you're not obsessed with hiding every so-called flaw. In fact, what often makes a moment unforgettable is when you lean into your quirks, your natural expressions, your real self, instead of trying to live up to some impossible idea of how intimacy is supposed to look. Confidence shows up in the little choices. Do you avoid the light, or do you let it shine? Do you laugh if something awkward happens, or do you shut down and freeze? He's paying attention to how you feel about yourself, and that's the energy that defines the moment. What most women don't realize is that a man's attraction doesn't deepen because you have zero insecurities. It deepens because you're not ruled by them. Confidence tells him that he can let his guard down too. When he sees that you're at ease, he feels safer. He feels less judged. He feels invited to connect rather than pressured to impress. That's why men notice confidence so strongly the first time you're intimate. It doesn't just shape how he sees you, it shapes how he experiences himself with you. So when you think about that first moment, remember this: it isn't about having the perfect body, the perfect moves, or the perfect performance. What he notices most is your energy, your comfort, your presence. Confidence is magnetic because it creates a space where both of you can actually enjoy the experience instead of worrying about it. And that's what he remembers long after the moment has passed, not perfection, but the way your confidence made everything else feel effortless. The second thing men notice the first time you're intimate is your energy and your presence. When I say energy, I don't mean something mystical or abstract. I mean the feeling you bring into the moment, whether you're engaged, connected, and open, or whether you're distant, distracted, and guarded. Men pick up on that almost instantly because intimacy is less about mechanics and more about emotional exchange. He can sense if you're really there with him, enjoying the connection, or if you're in your head, worrying about how you look or thinking about what's going to happen next. Presence is powerful because it tells him he has you, not just your body. Think about the last time you were talking to someone who kept looking at their phone, while you were speaking. They might have been physically in front of you, but you felt they weren't really there. The same principle applies here. If you're not present, if your energy feels like you're going through the motions, it creates distance. But when you are truly immersed in the moment, when you bring warmth, playfulness, and real attention, it creates electricity. That energy doesn't come from trying to be perfect. It comes from letting yourself experience what's happening without judgment. Men are very tuned into that difference because intimacy is vulnerable for them too. They notice when your energy reassures them that you're enjoying yourself, that you're not just checking a box, that you're emotionally invested. And here's the truth. Presence makes things infinitely more exciting. When you're laughing, when you're playful, when you allow yourself to be spontaneous, that energy is contagious. It tells him he's not alone in the experience. He has a partner who's right there with him. On the other hand, when you're disconnected, even if everything looks perfect from the outside, it leaves him feeling empty. That's why men remember the way your energy felt more than they remember any one thing you did. They're not walking away thinking about technical details. They're walking away thinking about whether they felt a spark, whether they felt desired, whether they felt like you were truly with them. That spark isn't about performance. It's about presence. What often gets overlooked is how much men crave authenticity in these moments. They don't want someone who seems like they're following a script or trying to act out a role. They want someone who's real, who reacts naturally, who feels free enough to express joy, playfulness, or even nervous laughter. That honesty in your energy makes the moment memorable. Presence isn't about being flawless, it's about being real. And here's where it connects to confidence. When you're confident, it's easier to be present because you're not lost in overthinking or self-criticism. Your confidence allows you to bring that warm, open energy into the space. It allows you to focus on connection instead of insecurity. Men notice this alignment immediately, and it's what makes intimacy feel alive rather than mechanical. So what men are really tuned into in that first experience isn't whether every move is perfect, but whether your energy feels inviting, whether you're truly present. Because presence is what makes intimacy unforgettable. It's what turns a physical act into a genuine connection. And long after the moment ends, he won't just remember what happened, he'll remember how your energy made him feel. Another thing men notice the very first time you're intimate is how you respond, not how you perform. There's this common misconception that intimacy is some kind of test, where you're supposed to impress the other person with your skills or with how good you are. But that's not what men are paying attention to. What truly stands out is whether your responses are real, whether you're engaged in the moment, and whether you allow yourself to feel instead of trying to deliver a perfect act. Men don't remember a performance, they remember authenticity. Think about it this way. When someone is performing, there's a distance between them and the experience. They're more concerned about how they're being seen than about how they're actually feeling. And when that happens, the other person can sense it. It's like watching an actor recite lines they don't believe in. Technically, it might look right, but something about it feels hollow. In intimacy, that hollowness kills connection. But when you respond naturally, when you express enjoyment, when you allow yourself to laugh, when your body language matches what you're really feeling, that's when intimacy comes alive. Men notice the little things. They notice when your eyes light up in the moment, when you lean in because you want more, when your breathing changes naturally, when you allow yourself to react without worrying about how it looks. Those responses reassure them that you're not just there physically, but emotionally too. It tells them you're not trying to check off a list of what you should do. You're actually connected to what's happening. And that authenticity makes the moment unforgettable. Here's something most people don't talk about. Men are far more insecure in those moments than they let on. They're wondering if they're doing the right thing, if they're pleasing you, if they're enough. Your authentic responses are what tell them the truth. When you show enthusiasm, when you express enjoyment, it gives them confidence. It makes them want to invest more, to give more, to connect more deeply. On the flip side, if your responses feel forced or mechanical, they pick up on that too, and it leaves them feeling uncertain or even inadequate. That's why it's so important to release the idea that intimacy is about performing well. Men don't walk away remembering how polished you were. They walk away remembering how real you were. They remember the feeling of being desired, of being connected, of being part of something that wasn't just physical but emotional. When you respond with honesty, whether that means playfulness, tenderness, or even nervous laughter, it tells him you're human, and it makes the experience more intimate rather than less. And this is where the earlier points tie together. Confidence makes it easier to stop performing because you're no longer worrying about perfection. Presence makes your responses natural because you're actually tuned into the moment instead of stuck in your head. Together, these create a space where intimacy feels spontaneous and alive. Men notice that energy because it's rare. Too many people go through intimacy trying to live up to an image when the truth is that the image was never what mattered. What mattered was how real the connection felt. So, the next time you think you have to get it all right, remember this: men aren't grading your performance. They're feeling your responses. They're looking for those genuine signals that tell them you're with them, that you're enjoying this, that you're not just doing it for their benefit, but for your own too. Because that's what creates lasting chemistry. That's what makes intimacy memorable. It's not the perfection of the act. It's the authenticity of the response that lingers long after the moment is over. Something that often goes unnoticed but carries huge weight the first time you're intimate is what happens before and after the moment itself. Men notice the emotional connection wrapped around the experience, not just the act, the lead up. The way you talk, the way you look at each other, the laughter, the warmth, sets the tone for everything that follows. And just as important, the way you are afterward leaves a lasting impression, sometimes even more than the intimacy itself. Men aren't just asking, was this good? They're asking, did this feel like something meaningful, or was it just mechanical? That sense of connection is what makes the difference. Before intimacy even begins, men notice whether they feel chosen, wanted, and respected. If the lead up is full of tension, awkwardness, or detachment, it makes everything that follows feel uncertain. But when there's ease, maybe playful teasing, maybe a moment of eye contact that lingers, maybe the comfort of conversation, it tells him this isn't just physical, it's emotional. That emotional safety allows him to let his guard down. Because as much as men may act like they're always confident in these situations, there's often an undercurrent of worry. Will I be enough? Will she regret this? Will this mean something or nothing? The way you connect before intimacy answers those questions for him without a word. And then there's what happens after. This is the part that most people underestimate, but men notice it immediately. Do you shut down, roll away, or act like the moment didn't matter? Or do you linger, laugh, and hold space for connection even when the physical part is done? That after moment tells him how significant it was for you. It tells him whether intimacy was something shared or something transactional. Men remember that feeling far more than they remember any specific detail. If you create warmth afterward, if you make it feel safe and human, he will walk away associating you with comfort, closeness, and trust. This is why intimacy is never just about what happens in the middle. The before and after shape how the entire experience is remembered. A man who feels like the emotional connection was there will carry that memory with him. He'll think of you not as someone who just gave him attention for a moment, but as someone who made him feel valued and seen. That's the kind of impact that lingers far longer than the physical side. And it connects so closely with what we've already said. Confidence allows you to approach intimacy without fear, which makes the before feel natural and light rather than pressured. Presence allows you to actually enjoy the connection, which makes the act itself feel alive. And your authentic responses give reassurance in the moment. But the emotional connection before and after ties it all together. It transforms intimacy from an event into an experience, from a fleeting encounter into something memorable. Men notice this not because they're analyzing every detail, but because they feel the difference. They feel when intimacy has heart in it, when it carries meaning beyond the surface. And that's why it's not just about what happens when you're together physically. It's about how you show up as a whole, before, during, and after. Because in the end, what he remembers most is not just the physical closeness, but the emotional imprint you left behind. One of the most powerful things men notice the first time you're intimate is how comfortable you are with vulnerability. Intimacy, by its nature, strips away a lot of the layers we usually hide behind. It's not just about being physically exposed, it's about being emotionally seen. And for many people, that's the scariest part. Men notice if you're willing to let your guard down, if you're able to trust, if you're comfortable enough to show up without a mask. That vulnerability doesn't make you weaker. It makes the experience feel real. In a world where so many of us are taught to protect ourselves, to control the image we project, letting someone see you in an unpolished, unguarded state is rare. And when a man experiences that the first time you're intimate, it tells him something about who you are and about the space you're creating together. If you're rigid, overly guarded, or constantly trying to appear perfect, he feels that wall. But when you let yourself be soft, when you laugh at little imperfections, when you allow silence or closeness without rushing to cover it with performance, it signals trust. That trust is unforgettable. Men often carry their own fears into intimacy, fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, it encourages him to do the same. He notices that he doesn't have to perform or prove himself because you've shown him that this is a space for honesty, not perfection. That kind of vulnerability creates a feedback loop. The more open you are, the more open he becomes, and the deeper the connection grows. And it's that depth that he'll remember long after the details fade. Being comfortable with vulnerability also means you're not afraid of genuine emotion. You're not afraid to say what you want, to ask for what you need, to express how you feel in the moment. Men notice when you can communicate openly rather than trying to silently hold everything in. They notice when you're confident enough to admit your desires or brave enough to admit when something makes you nervous. That honesty doesn't ruin intimacy, it strengthens it because it makes everything feel authentic. And this connects back to everything else. Confidence is what allows you to step into vulnerability without being consumed by fear. Presence is what allows you to sit with that openness instead of running away from it. Your genuine responses give life to the moment, but vulnerability gives it depth. Without it, intimacy can feel shallow, like two people playing roles. With it, intimacy becomes something unique, something personal, something meaningful. Men don't remember vulnerability because it makes you flawless. They remember it because it makes you human. That small act of trust, letting him see you as you are, not as the polished version you think you need to be, is what bonds him to you. And in those first moments, that bond is what sets the tone for everything that might follow. If you can be comfortable enough to be vulnerable, you give him permission to drop his own armor. That's when intimacy becomes more than physical connection. That's when it becomes an emotional experience he carries with him. So when you think about what men notice, remember it's not about perfection or performance. It's about the courage to let yourself be seen. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's the very thing that makes intimacy powerful, memorable, and meaningful. And it's the thing that will stay with him long after the first time fades into memory. Another thing men notice deeply the first time you're intimate is how safe and appreciated you make them feel too. It's easy to think of intimacy as something men are always confident about, but the truth is, they're often carrying just as many insecurities into that space as you are. They wonder if they're good enough, if you're enjoying yourself, if they're meeting your expectations. And just like you notice when someone makes you feel comfortable, men notice when you create an environment where they can let go of that pressure and simply be themselves. Safety and intimacy isn't just about the physical, it's about emotional reassurance. When you show appreciation, whether it's through words, touch, or even the way you respond naturally, it tells him he's valued. He's not being measured against some invisible standard. He's being accepted for who he is in that moment. Men may not always say it, but they crave that validation. They want to feel like they matter to you, like their effort isn't going unnoticed, like the connection is mutual and not one-sided. When you show gratitude, when you let him know you enjoy being there with him, it builds his confidence. And confidence in him strengthens the bond between you. Think about how different intimacy feels when someone is critical, dismissive, or disengaged. It creates tension, it makes the other person feel inadequate, and it takes away from the moment. On the other hand, when you're encouraging, when you acknowledge him, when you make him feel seen, it amplifies the connection. Men notice this immediately. They don't just remember what happened physically, they remember how you made them feel about themselves. Did you make them feel judged? Or did you make them feel celebrated? That memory shapes how they see the entire experience. This doesn't mean you need to shower him with constant praise or scripted compliments. Appreciation is often communicated in the smallest ways. A smile that says you're enjoying yourself, a playful comment, the way you reach for him afterward, these subtle signals reassure him that he matters. Men remember that reassurance because it's rare. So many people enter intimacy focused only on their own insecurities that they forget the other person has theirs too. By being mindful of his experience, you create balance. You show him it's not just about him making you feel good, but about both of you sharing the moment. And here's the beauty of it. When a man feels safe and appreciated, he invests more into the connection. He wants to give more, to be more present, to make it meaningful for both of you. That cycle of safety and appreciation feeds into itself, creating intimacy that feels alive and memorable. Without it, even the most passionate moment can fall flat. With it, even the simplest moment can feel extraordinary. This ties in perfectly with everything we've talked about. Confidence allows you to show up without fear. Presence keeps you engaged. Authentic responses make the moment real, and vulnerability deepens the bond. But appreciation completes the picture. It transforms intimacy into a shared experience rather than a performance or transaction. Men notice when you value them as much as they're trying to value you. That mutual recognition is what makes the experience stand out in their mind. So when you think about what really matters that first time, remember it's not just about how he makes you feel. It's also about how you make him feel. Safety, acceptance, and appreciation. These are the things men carry with them long after the first experience is over. They don't just remember your body or your moves. They remember the feeling of being wanted, respected, and safe with you. And in the end, that's the feeling that turns a single moment into something unforgettable.